First of all, it's a great pleasure to be here today with you to present our study on capacity development. And before we dive into these findings, let me briefly introduce myself and VENRO. As I said, my name is Lukas Goltermann, and VENRO is the umbrella organization of development and humanitarian non-governmental organizations in Germany. We represent around 150 member organizations that are engaged in development cooperation, in humanitarian aid, and global justice. And our mission is to advocate for just global order, and sustainable development, and strong civil society engagement. You see some of the logos here. And we do sort of political work, advocacy work to represent the interests of our members. But we also engage in sort of qualifications and transfer of knowledge between all our members. And to this end, we also conduct a lot of capacity development work. We believe that strengthening the skills, the knowledge, and the structures of NGOs is very important for their work for sustainable development cooperation. And we have developed a couple of instruments that are outlined here. For example, we offer a variety of trainings and seminars. So that's roughly 20 events per year. We've had one on digital civic spaces, for example, in February, and also one on impact orientation in March. We have a training newsletter with more than 2,000 subscribers, mostly from Germany, but also from other parts of the world. We engage in peer learning. So that means we have virtual, but also sort of real life spaces where people can meet to exchange their knowledge, for example, in communities of practice on preventing corruption and safeguarding. We also have on our website a broad portfolio of e-learning materials. These are recordings from previous sessions, but also explanatory videos that you can also look at, so free tutorials and self-paced learning modules. And we also maintain a good practice library on our website, as well as a lot of publications, so handouts, guidelines, and so on different topics. Unfortunately, not all of them are in English or other languages, but an increasing number of our publications are. So I invite you to also take a look there. Thank you.
So about MzN International. So we are a social business and consultancy firm. We've been in operation since 2011, and essentially we help to build better NGOs. So that includes supporting NGOs with their overall business development and fundraising. So that includes things such as broadening their markets, defining services and their products, identifying NGOs' unique value proposition. And from the map that you're seeing on the left-hand side, we've been doing that across about 25 countries. We've also supported NGOs with strategic risk management, as well as, assessing their social return on investment. And that pertains specifically to projects and the impact it has on different target groups and different communities. MzN is split into two main components. So we have an advisory side, and that's the part that I lead. But we also have a capacity strengthening side. And as you can see from the organizational chart there, Nicole Jennings, she's our training manager. So we support interested NGOs in developing capacity in things like innovative finance, catalytic finance, artificial intelligence in proposal writing, as well as, just general structural reformation and just organizational development. So we begin with what is capacity development? For me, it involves strengthening various dimensions. So this is looking at skills, knowledge, resources, and all those factors that are necessary for effective participation in the development sector for NGOs. It can be carried out by a variety of different actors, and these actors can come from within as well as external to the organization. Important to note is that capacity development is a multifaceted process, and it aims at, like I said, enhancing individuals, organizations, communities to effectively perform tasks to achieve development goals. In the study, I highlighted various different types of capacity development, and these are segmented across the individual, organizational, systemic, sectoral, and community level. So to define these very briefly, the individual level focuses on enhancing the skills and competencies of the individual. Within an NGO, this would be its employees. At the organizational level, this is aimed at strengthening the overall capabilities of the organization, and that's strengthening its structures, its processes, and systems. Systemic level is referring to the broader systems in which these NGOs operate. So these include policies, regulations, and institutional frameworks. At the sectoral level, this is focused on building capacity within specific sectors. So this could be pertaining to, for example, health or education or agriculture. And at this level, the aim is to address sector-specific challenges and generally to improve service delivery. And at the community level, this is aimed at empowering local communities. So this could be from the perspective of the NGO, so the community working with the NGO to achieve a certain goal, or the NGO supporting the local community. So any effects that the local community would have received would be classified as at the community level.
Thank you, Toni-Ann. And I think what is important also in our understanding of capacity development is that it's always a sort of a reaction also to whatever happens within the organization or around the organization. So you can also think of it as a process of adapting to the environment in which you work, your organization is working.
Yeah.
And speaking of context, I would like to highlight sort of the point that this capacity development is, it's a very crucial, but it's a constantly evolving field. And so the questions, of course, why do we put in the effort to develop a new study on capacity development? I want to give you sort of an example of what is happening today to many organizations everywhere in the world. And that's sort of the shifting global challenges and the new modes of cooperation that we're witnessing as a result of the new US administration and the end of USAID that is threatening or impacting many organizations. I'm sure many of the organizations here in the room have also been impacted by this. And but it's not only the United States, but also other governments across the global north in Europe. They are also spending less on development cooperation, putting less money or making less money available for the things that we're working on. And this, of course, puts pressure on organizations everywhere to adapt and to develop sort of new skills, change perhaps the ways they collaborate or the ways that they work. And we hope that this manual can be of help to many organizations who are in this process of reorienting or improving their work. So more specifically, we wanted to know, how can NGOs do better in identifying the individual needs? What are the overall needs within NGOs? What aspects need to be taken into account when pursuing capacity development in a North-South partnership or when you work with a donor from the Global North? How can capacity development better be integrated in projects? Because this is where, for many organizations, the funding comes from. We also want to know what are capacity development providers that NGOs can turn to when they have certain sort of needs to change. And we try to answer many of these questions in our study. And this is what it looks like. I will post you the link in the chat in a minute. And you'll be the first to get to download it and look at it. And we will also send you the link after this workshop today. There's a second publication that you can see here. It's called Shifting Power. It's a publication we published 3 years ago, where we wanted to showcase some examples of how NGOs from the Global North and the Global South can work together to change this power imbalance that is there when you work with partners where one side sort of supplies money and the other is on the implementing side, more or less, and how this can be changed or how this is already changing. And I can also really recommend this publication, which you can also find on our website, of course, but I also put it here because the Stronger Together manual also builds on sort of this previous publication and the whole discourse around this as well.
So diving a bit more into the study itself, this slide just encapsulates the approach that we took to uncover the findings as well as to, put everything together for this particular report. So we took a three-prong approach, and that was looking at desk research, so that secondary data sources that have already been written, like Lukas just said. We also used that second manual as a foundation for this particular study. We also leveraged the experience of both MzN and VENRO. So these were just discussions and reviews of capacity development, manuals, interviews, feedback, etc., just to get some insights that were more real life focused, and to get a better understanding of, the sentiments that are in existence from a variety of different actors, both from the North and South. That's Global North and Global South. We also instituted a survey. So this was about a 30-question survey, and we had about 130 participants. The organizations that took part included, local NGOs, foundations, international NGOs across countries, most countries in the world. From the top of my head, I saw Ghana, I saw Mali, Germany was a big part, India, as well as Bangladesh. So to touch on the approaches a bit more, so for the survey, like I said, it was a 30-question survey sent to about 130 different development professionals, and it was just to collect firsthand insights from those who are actively engaged in the sector, which would help us to identify challenges, emerging priorities, and any gaps in existing approaches. When it comes to the leveraging experiences from VENRO and MzN, this was just uncovering those data collection sources that I mentioned before, but we were trying to align insights from those past projects with current trends. So we tried to match it with what the responses that we were getting in the survey, as well as what we got from the desk research, just to identify those effective strategies and best practices that could drive sustainable CD efforts in the development sector. And desk research is self-explanatory. We just tried to get a foundational base from which we could launch the study.
What have you found?
Yes. So we found quite a bit of interesting facts. On the left side of this slide, you will see some recommendations that we have put together in response to those findings. We'll go through the findings a bit more in the next slide, but the right side of this slide is one of the I think one of the most interesting aspects of this particular study, and it was just looking at what could capacity development be in the next couple of years. So you will see some main points like technological integration, monitoring and evaluation, as well as adaptation. When it comes to adaptation, I think it's such an important point, especially now, like Lukas said, we're dealing with a very drastically changed and changing development sector with the collapse of USAID, and then a lot of traditional institutional donors either reducing their funding disbursements or they're trying to align the money that they disburse with their own personal or national interests. And this was something that I touched on briefly when, creating this report, just kind of, from trends that I've been seeing for the last couple of years, just to identify those and to give interested NGOs some think pieces for how to move forward. In the study, I touched briefly on catalytic finance and impact investing. as alternative resource mobilization strategies. Building on what Lukas mentioned in terms of how to adapt, I would like to inform you that my organization, MzN International, has recently launched Human Planet, and they have done so with KOIS Investing based in Brussels. And this is just to manage the shortfall that's been left from the USAID collapse and to bring more and more NGOs into, this new world of funding. So it's just a program that would help you to understand what catalytic finance is, how your projects can fit, and how best to manage such a project and deal with different dispersers, such as investors and fund managers, etc. So if anyone is interested, I am happy to discuss it further at a later date. You can share your name and email, and I can take it from there.
So this is specifically for organizations that want to move into for-profit space?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
So this slide is just a detailed explanation of that previous slide that discussed CD needs in 3 to 7 years. As you can see, AI and digital transformation is a big topic, followed by things such as M&E, organizational sustainability and adaptability. DI is also a strong contender for the top spot here, which I thought is really interesting given the space that we're in now with DEI projects being on the decline or being forced to decline. But I think it's so interesting that this was one of the top answers. It just shows that the foundational aspects of what we believe in the development sector is still strong. So as it contends with the use of AI and digital transformation, we see that these have become more and more prevalent in capacity development. They are increasingly becoming an important skill set. Many fields, such as human rights, healthcare, legal affairs, are becoming increasingly integrated and intersected with artificial intelligence. With anything, there are benefits and pitfalls to this. So some benefits would include improved efficiency, enhanced project transparency, and better data management. But pitfalls would include risks such as data breaches and privacy violations that could endanger not just the organization, but also vulnerable populations, as well as the digital divide expanding, which exacerbates inequalities. Okay, so this slide is from what I would say is the most important and probably the most central aspect of the study. And it's just assessing that usual interaction between Global North and Global South NGOs. And by Global North, I mean both NGOs and donors. We asked the respondents to let us know if there were any instances where their capacity development needs were more or less not taken care of adequately because of a lack of cultural understanding or cultural sensitivity. As you can see, an overwhelming 87% of respondents said this has happened to them. And the speech bubbles, which have some responses, this will continue into the next slide as well, just gave us some insight into why this was. So we see things like language barriers, lack of appreciation for cultural mechanisms or trends or figures, or just an overall focus on the task at hand more so than meshing that with the community, their expectations, their perspectives, and things like that. Transformative partnerships, which we want to engender with this study or want to give NGOs a chance to uncover through the steps that we've outlined, these need a dismantling of ingrained power imbalances. And this is done through structural, institutional, or personal behavior changes. And this is across both Global North and Global South NGOs. It's a self-critical approach which requires an assessment of actions, methods, and structures. And it should prioritize transparency, accountability, and integrity. Cultivating an environment of openness and continuous learning, including self-examination, anti-racism, empowerment training, and discussions on organizational goals is essential for effecting these transformational partnerships. and so dismantling systemic inequalities. Next slide would be more of the same, just some assessments of why these CD needs did not match cultural sensitivity. So we can move to the next slide.
And I just want to add to this that, this is one of the reasons why this takes up quite a lot of space in our manual, as you will see, and we put in there some suggestions how to deal with it. We haven't put in many practical examples, but you will find some more practical examples in the Shifting Power report that I mentioned earlier.
Okay, so touching back on the findings a bit more. So we would recommend that for North-South collaboration to be as effective and mutually beneficial as possible, we should adopt a holistic approach. What you're seeing on this slide is just a subset of the NGO roles that we've identified in the study, with the knowledge that, this differs from NGO to NGO. So some roles may be reduced or combined with another, or they may not exist at all, depending on the size and the resources of the NGO. So essentially, these roles have their own CD needs. So for example, board members would require skills in strategic planning, financial oversight, and legal responsibilities. Whereas management would need strong leadership, strategic thinking, resource management. Project and program managers need development in project management, budgeting, and donor relations. So we try to break down all the areas that these roles would work in, and then their affiliated capacity development needs. So given limited resources, NGOs must adopt strategic approaches to develop capacity development. Prioritizing needs based on roles and alignment with project goals and long-term sustainability is absolutely important. Decision-making process for capacity development activities should be ideally participatory, but often involves donor requirements and executive leadership. So one way to subset that is to integrate these activities into project proposals and then justifying them to donors to say, okay, this particular capacity development need is absolutely essential to the project success, as well as organizational sustainability. Usually donors have a set percentage that they're willing to allot to capacity development, but you should always discuss with the particular donor or partner to see what can be done for your organization. In addition, building a resilient workforce involves prioritizing cross-training, knowledge management, and skills in fundraising, network building, and other key skills. So while competitive salaries may be a challenge, fostering a strong organizational culture and potentially offering non-monetary incentives can aid in staff retention and motivation. Ultimately, CD approaches should be tailored for each role and then combined with strategic prioritization, resource integration to ensure the overall capacity and effectiveness for the NGO.
And I think what is very helpful with this study is that we put in these 12 different roles that you see here with a brief overview of, what skills they need and what are typical capacity development needs. So this should really help organizations to have a broad view when they try to assess, okay, what are our needs at this moment?
Right. Thanks, Lukas. So this slide is just a few annexes in the study where you can see a breakdown of CD providers by geographic region, as well as for interested organizations to take their own capacity self-assessment. Okay, so having a power-sensitive approach. As I said before, we have power imbalances in the usual partnerships between North and South actors. I already said these negatively affect equitable partnerships and mutually beneficial growth. Southern partners must also take ownership of their capacity development. They should set goals and design these contextually, while Northern partners should provide supportive resources and expertise. Effective capacity development requires a sustainable engagement and adaptability, and this involves moving beyond short-term perspectives to foster lasting impact. Multi-year collaborations, gradual knowledge transfer, and regular reflection cycles are essential for building robust partnerships. When it comes to flexible long-term planning, this is just thinking ahead of all those plannable and unplannable components of capacity development. So when it comes to, submitting funding applications, you should differentiate those just so funders have an idea of what your immediate and more latent needs are, and they can plan around that as well. So plannable CD measures such as workshops and audits, these should be detailed with clear objectives and timelines, whereas non-plannable measures such as on-the-job training or learner-requested training should be presented as flexible components, which would allow for adaptation based on the evolving needs and challenges for a particular project, but possibly for the entire organization. Experience suggests that a significant portion of successful skill building occurs through non-plannable training, often complementing planned activities. So you should assess these as comprehensively as possible, and always remember that there is always the opportunity to discuss with your partner or donor to make any changes or amendments depending on your need.